Which is exactly what I was saying, but it turned out that the next day I found out she was a preacher's daughter.
To su islamski obredi.
Yeah, no, it was pretty nuts.
Obredno su zaklali ovcu. Nažalost, recimo...
You know, I don't really know. I've been trying to think about it. Do you have any recommendations, Slobodan?
Most ne mora biti simboličan. To je samo još lijep je most.
No more politics, no more social justice, none of that crap, for at least a little bit. I want to do something different.
Bolje radimo, kvalitetnije radimo, moćniji smo.
Oh, well, hey, this is interesting. It looks like somebody sent me something. Okay, weird. If I'm reading this right, the Daily Mail published an article favorable towards the idea that aluminum in vaccines causes autism. Wait, no, what are you doing? What are you... Holy shit. I guess I'm on my own. Hello everybody, Jeff Holiday here, and today we're going to be talking about vaccines. Ooh, one of my favorite topics. Why is it one of my favorite topics? Because it's really goddamn important. You see, in today's political climate, we have all types of things going on. You have problems with Trump. You got problems with different types of socio-political factors, the extreme far right and the far left, and etc. But what never stops, what never ever fucking stops, regardless of what's happening in politics, it's that when we spread misinformation, innocent people suffer. And when misinformation is being peddled, it is always the most vulnerable of us that are at risk, like, well, children. And we've seen it happen, sadly, unfortunately, over and over again. Horrifying news stories where the rise of measles, an easily preventable fucking disease, happens because, I don't know, people don't vaccinate their fucking kids. But by and large, usually the anti-vax propaganda machine it's spread around because of mommy bloggers on Facebook and various blogs and firebrands trying to spout off some conspiracy theory bullshit and nonsense about vaccines. Usually, it's not in mainstream media. Well, I give you the Daily fucking Mail. Oh yeah, the same goddamn people that attacked York Sprave, the Slingshot Channel guy, because he was teaching people how to kill police officers or some shit. What the fuck? Anyway, the name of this article, perhaps we now have the link between vaccination and autism. Professor reveals aluminum in jabs may cause sufferers to have up 10 times more of the metal in their brains than is safe. Now, if you couldn't guess, because I'm actually talking about this in video, it is a bullshit. But I'm going to show you how it's bullshit. But before I do, I want to give a shout out to David Gorski. Dr. Gorski is a surgical oncologist, and he's also a professor of surgery, and he's also really well known in some of the very pro-science crowd, the science communicator crowd, as being a bit of a firebrand, extremely intelligent, very eloquent, and generally all around a badass. And a lot of the clarifying stuff that I got for this video comes from something he wrote on his blog, and then I went and I checked it for myself, and it turns out he was right. No real big surprise there. So, thank you very much, Dr. Gorski. Here we go. Now, this article is mostly a repost of another article that was written for the Hippocratic Post. Now, what's so fucked up about this article, what really makes this not just shit, but in a way kind of fucking evil, it's written by a guy named Chris Exley, okay? Chris Exley writes this article, and this article is about a piece of science, a piece of a research paper, and it was written by... yeah, Chris Exley. Huh. Well, there's no conflict of interest in reporting it there, is it? Is it? Obviously, a good, reputable newspaper like the Daily Mail would catch that, right? So why didn't they? Huh. So despite the fact that this is, well, somebody writing an article to support their own research, let's take a look at what it says. Aluminum crosses the membrane that separates the brain from blood. The metal accumulates in cells that maintain a constant internal environment. Autism sufferers may have genetic changes that cause them to hold aluminum. Disgraced doctor Andrew Wakefield linked autism to the MMR vaccine in 1995. His views are widely discredited, but the WHO says vaccine fears may put many off. Okay, well, before we get into the evidence of why this whole thing is completely bullshit, let's address these main key salient points. Number 1, membrane crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's not impossible, but there's a reason that there's a blood-brain barrier. It's a barrier. It isolates and keeps things separate. That statement in and of itself is so reductivist, I can't even fucking wrap my head around it. It makes no fucking sense whatsoever. That'd be like saying people get rare tropical diseases. What, like all the time? Or rarely? Is there maybe they shouldn't go to the tropical areas without taking proper precautions before they... No? You're not going to mention none of that? It's just that it just happened. Oh, okay. Very fucking helpful. The metal accumulates in cells required for maintaining basically homeostasis. How? Is aluminum super smart and it can know which cells to get into? No, what? And the funny part about it too is that if there was a chemical mechanism by which aluminum would be more drawn to these types of cells, in the research itself, because I read the research, and in all these articles, they don't explain any way that could be the case. And their evidence that it is happening, it isn't really what they say it is. Now this next one is a fucking doozy. Oh my god. Autism sufferers may have a genetic predisposition to hold aluminum. Where do you get that from? In what? There is nothing in this paper that in any way shows that there could be a genetic component to any of this whatsoever. It makes no fucking sense. Disgraced Dr. Andrew Wakefield linked the MMR vaccine to autism. Well, there you go. First word in there. Disgraced. He was disgraced because he lied, because he was full of shit. Like, why would you even mention Andrew Wakefield to begin with? Why? What's the fucking point? So that people can, find this on a Google search? Jesus Christ. His views are widely discredited, but the WHO warns that it might put people off vaccinating. Well, yeah, no shit. You got this guy who's selling gullible people this fear that vaccines are going to make their kids autistic. People are gullible. The only way to fight ignorance is with education and knowledge. And you'd think that a reputable news organization like the Daily Mail would take that serious and try and do just that. But I guess that would be naive. Now, a quick little thing before we move on, I need to mention this really, really quickly. Now, before, when you had the whole Andrew Wakefield, and he was trying to tell people that, vaccines are the reason why autism is a thing, he was pointing towards thimerosal, or mercury, as the reason that this was going to be, that vaccines were basically going to be causing autism. Now, the thing is, since then, even though it had no proof, no evidence whatsoever to back it up, vaccine manufacturers were like, okay, fine, we won't put it in. And guess what? It didn't affect the rates of autism whatsoever. So, the anti-vax movement, because it's not actually based on facts at all, instead had to find a new villain, and thus, aluminum. And it's been debunked over and over and over again, yet still, for some reason, it persists. It's almost like, when you believe something without evidence, and there's really strict guidelines by which you have to operate and understand to really know that secret hidden truth. It's kind of like, it's kind of almost like a cult. All right, so the name of this study is Aluminum in Brain Tissue in Autism, and it's co-authored by Matthew Mould, Dorcas Umar, Andrew King, and Christopher Exley, the guy who wrote the glowing review about this, which was then parroted by the Daily Mail. Now, really one of the big warning signs for this study as well is it was funded by an anti-vaccine foundation. I'm talking about the Child Medical Safety Research Institute, and it's basically run by Claire and Al Dwoskin, and these people are rabid anti-vaxxers. But like the good Dr. Gorski says, a research study has to rise and fall on its own merits, so regardless of who funded it, even though that is highly suspicious, let's move on to their evidence. Okay, so what did they do? Well, they received brain tissue samples from people who had autism. And from this, they then used 2 different techniques in which to test for aluminum. So what they did with these brain samples was 5 of them. They got 5, and then they analyzed them using transversely heated atomic absorption spectroscopy, and I'll explain that in a minute. They also received 10 other brains, and they studied them using a certain staining method. These were subjected to staining with the fluorescent probe LumaGallium, which is purported to be a selective stain for aluminum in cells, and was first used to localize aluminum in plant roots. But you see, it's sold by a biotechnology company, and it's used not just for aluminum, but also aluminum, gallium, and other metals as well. And also, it's really important to point out, so they got these 15 brains, right? They studied these 15 brains, all of them have autism. At no point during this study did they have a control group. So you have only 15, which is an insanely small sample size, and you have nothing to compare it to. Nothing. But they do compare it to something. And this, oh my god, this is rich. Oh my god. In the study, it's reported that when they measured by atomic absorption spectroscopy, you ended up with some brains with a range from 0.01 to 22.11 micrograms per dry weight. Okay, so there's a wide spectrum of measurements from, well, negligible to 22 micrograms per dry brain weight. Okay, well, here's the thing though, that's just for any kind of area when it's measured. When they measure overall brain, well, this is what they get. In the study, they report that it's 1.2 to 4.79 micrograms per dry weight for the whole brain. Okay, so let me get this straight. There's this wide spectrum that can happen inside the brain, but when you're measuring just the overall weight of the brain, how much aluminum is inside of it, it narrows down to a much more smaller scale. From not negligible in the 0.01, but like into quantifiable measurements in micrograms. Well, that's interesting. What does that mean? See, a lot of this comes down to methodology and how scientists have to craft their experiments. Now, in this, what they were doing was they were taking select regions in different lobes of the brain, because the brain is made up of various different lobes, and then they would measure them. But they would take that sample, each sample, and they would measure it 3 times to get basically their measurement and try to understand what this all meant. It sounds good, right? Well, not really how they did it. Take, for instance, this one. In one of the samples, they measured, and this is, keep in mind, this is the same exact biological sample. They measure it, and they get 2.44 micrograms, 1.66 micrograms, and 22.11 micrograms. Well, that's not all 3 very similar. One of these things doesn't quite look like the other. Okay, all right, so they measure the same biological sample. They get 2 kind of similar ones, and then 1 really, really big one. So what do they do with this information? What would be the safest way to really present this intellectually honestly? Well, obviously it would be to take all 3 and find the average. Well, that's what they did. That doesn't make any sense. Keep in mind, these are 5 brains. The ones that got the spectroscopy were only 5 brains with no controls whatsoever. No 5 normal brains, no nothing. Then they take the same exact samples, and you have 2 similar, and then 1 wildly different. Why didn't they keep testing them? Only 3? You're gonna plot a course of understanding in science with only 3 measurements? Really? Really? And that's not even to say that maybe they did do more measurements, but they're not actually reporting those measurements. We don't know. We don't know. And that's kind of one of the problems with this. When you have something like this, something so wildly different, this flies in the face of one of the most important aspects about science, replicatability. Science maintains its consensus by people being able to go back and test the exact same thing and find the same answer. That's how you know that it's real. But when you're doing your own study yourself, and you're replicating your own study while you're doing the study, and you're not getting the same result, the answer isn't to be like, well, let's just take the average after 3. That is the laziest piece of shit fucking science I've ever fucking heard of. But if you want to talk about laziness, in this guy's own study, at one point he tries to point towards his previous research. He called it the 60 brain study, right? And so he's like, hey, we check this out with the 60 brain study. And if you click the link, it goes to the wrong study. It doesn't even go to the study that he's trying to cite. What? Now the real humdinger is just yet to come. But first, let's talk about the staining study, just really quickly, because how we do stainings in biological samples is really goddamn complex. But basically is this: they were staining for finding metals and types of brain tissues and whatnot, but they also didn't use what every other goddamn scientist does when dealing with brain samples, which is use specific dyes to identify specific types of cells and neural cells in the samples that they're checking. They didn't do any of that. They just squirted this fucking stain and were like, metals. Okay? But really, let's get back to the big old cherry on top of this shit mountain. This is what makes this so fucked up. This just drives me crazy. In the paper, they say, why, for example, would one of 4 major brain lobes of a 15-year-old boy with autism be 8.74 micrograms per dry weight, a value which is 10 times higher than might be considered as acceptable for an adult, never mind a child. Now that's some sneaky fucking language there. Really fucking sneaky. Because they say in one lobe compared to what you would find in the brain of an adult. But they're not telling you the whole fucking story. Not at all. This is predatorily worded bullshit. Referencing his own paper to talk about what the averages are for how much aluminum you can have in the brain, he cites a weight of aluminum in the brain that is around 2.0 micrograms, all right? Try and follow along. Now, in research done, finding the accumulation of aluminum inside of Alzheimer's brain patients, and also comparing those to people who did not have Alzheimer's, they found that an average amount of aluminum that was present in both, and that was 1.4 to 2.5 micrograms per dry brain weight. So that's 1.4 to 2.5. Like, I know this isn't necessarily the easiest thing to follow along, but I'll try and sum it up as best as I can. The problem with this paper is that ultimately this was done to try and prove something that they already believed and are trying to find a way to show you that it's a thing, even though they themselves probably know that it's not a thing. They took 10 brains, and brains are a very precious fucking resource that we don't have a lot of, especially brains with autism, to study. They took 10 of those brains and they stained them using an inappropriate fucking technique that doesn't actually going to show them what they wanted to show them. It's just going to give them an arbitrarily easy to look at and look say, hey, metal in the brain. But it doesn't actually prove anything. Then they take 5 more brains and they subject them to spectroscopy. They measure specific parts of the brain, and then they average out, even though their replicatability in their own science doesn't fucking work. And then, on top of all of that, they have no controls whatsoever, no non-autism brains to try and compare them to. And then, on top of all of that, one of the authors of the research itself writes an article supporting his own research, and then somehow it gets picked up and published by the Daily Mail. Bravo. Fucking bravo. It's for this reason specifically why I am absolutely reinvigorating my fucking quest to rip apart anti-vaxxers. Why I'm even more encouraged to go and watch the documentary Vaxxed and butt-fuck it to death. I am sick of this shit. It's lies. It's all fucking lies. Constantly pushed over and over and over again. Every year, over and over. How many times do we have to say it? Vaccines don't cause fucking autism. Vaccinate your fucking kids. Otherwise, if you don't vaccinate your kids, either they will catch diseases and could possibly die, or they will infect kids who can't be vaccinated, and those kids could fucking die. It's irresponsible fucking nonsense sold on fear. Fear. Whew, got a little heated up there. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I hope you're well. God, fucking anti-vaxxers. I'll see you next time, alright? Bye-bye.